Earlier in the course we talked about the general safety obligation, and one of those important points was to make sure your boat's safe. And we're going to talk about routine maintenance. If you attend to that you are going towards meeting your safety obligation. It's important to keep everything serviced, maintained and checked. Do your pre-departure checks. Before you go, check your steering, check your fuel, check your bilges, check your propulsion systems, check your electronics, and don't forget to put the bungs in. All these things are very important. The information following goes into a really great detail about the sort of checks you can do around your boat on a regular basis. Really important you do that and you follow up with the information that's within the course in written form, familiarise yourself with it, and by doing that and by following the procedures you will be meeting your general safety obligation.
In addition to your regular motor servicing, to ensure that you have an enjoyable and safe time on the water, you need to do some basic maintenance checks before you leave home or the marina. Some of the points we're going to cover are motors, fuel, electrics, steering, accessories, lights, bungs and bilges and bilge pumps, tools, spares and expiry dates. When you're checking your motor, always ensure that your oil level is up high enough by checking to make sure that the level is between the two dots on the dipstick. Make sure it's secured back there. If you do need some oil, then use the manufacturer's recommended grades and top it up via this plug here. Then we go to fuel. We need to check to make sure that our primary water trap filter here hasn't got any water in it, and that the fuel bulb here is clear. And then check your hoses and your bulb to make sure that the hose or the bulb is not perished, and of course even the hose clamps, make sure that they're secure and they're not cracked or split. From there we check our secondary filter just over here, and then just do a visual around the motor to make sure you've used the motor. Make sure that you flush your system. In this particular motor you have two flushing adapters, one here and one at the front here, to ensure that you remove all the salt and contaminants out of your cooling system. Another way of doing it is using a set of ears on your leg. By attaching the hose here, it's forcing the water up through this area here, in through the leg and all through the cooling system. In different boats you have different types of steering, such as cable steering, chain steering, and in this case we have hydraulic steering. It's a single ram in this particular arrangement, and what you need to check here is for any signs of weeping of hydraulic oil, and ensure your fuel cap is secured. The vent needs to be clear to prevent a vacuum being formed in the fuel line. The emergency fuel shutoff here needs to be accessible, easy to be undone, to give you access to not only your emergency fuel shutoff, but also to check to make sure that the valve works, that the hose clamps are okay, and if you can see the lines underneath here fairly well, make sure that they're not perished or leaking fuel. Check to make sure that there's no fumes being emitted as well, because those fumes are extremely inflammable. Your batteries need to be checked on a regular basis to make sure your terminals and your connections are tight. Also check to make sure that your condition indicator is in the green to ensure that you've got a fully charged battery. Your batteries need to be in a battery box with a lid such as this and a security clamp to hold the battery down so it can't fall over, or even with the lid so you can't drop things on across the terminals. These batteries need to be fully charged, so to maintain that charge you have a battery isolator underneath here. When you're not using the boat, turn that battery isolator off so you're not running your power through the rest of the boat while you're not using it. With your steering, ensure that you've got movement from lock to lock. Even check your motor to make sure you haven't got any obstructions there to impede that steering. If you feel that the steering is getting a little bit ratchety, undo the cap here and just put a small amount of steering fluid in there, and then make sure that you remove all the air out of the system by once again going lock to lock, and then top it up again and do it again. Make sure you wipe off any excess that might run out of it, and make sure then that you screw the cap on nice and tight. Make sure you've got no drips anywhere at all. Then we go to the accessories. With the plotter, make sure that everything is working on there, that your speed indicator is there, your depth sounder is reading, and then also your engine management gauge. Make sure that you've got your speed and how much fuel you've got, and then you can just scroll through. In this case, you can scroll through and all the different things that you might have on your engine management gauge. Check if you've got a horn to make sure it works. And then make sure when you finish on the day that you turn everything off. Make sure that everything is turned off. Whoop. Make sure you check your nav lights by turning them on here. Go up and physically have a look to make sure that they're turned on. And then the running light above us, make sure that it's on as well. When you go into partially smooth and open waters, you need two forms of navigation. Could be a electronic plotter, a compass, it could be paper charts, it could even be an app on your phone, as long as you have sufficient charging facilities to run it. Keep your tools, your spare parts and your paperwork in a waterproof container such as this. Your beacon to beacon, your owner's manual, your toolkit that comes with the outboard motor. It's got a couple of open-ended spanners, a double-ended screwdriver, a tube spanner for your spark plugs, and a pair of pliers. That's all you need. All you need is just the basics. I have spare bungs. I have spare fuses and light globes, just in case. Always very, very handy to have this type of equipment in your boat at all times. While you're in the boat doing your final checks before you leave home or the marina, make sure your expiry dates, such as on your flares, which have got a 3-year life, make sure your manufacturer's date to the expiry date is well in the parameters of when you're going out. Also check your fire extinguishers to make sure that they're serviced every 12 months and they haven't gone over time. And then you're looking at your inflatable life jackets. They need to be serviced every 12 months. Make sure that you haven't passed that time period as well. The last thing we need to check is the EPIRB. And of course, as you know, the EPIRB is what we require by law to have on board the boat when you go more than 2 nautical miles from land. Now, we need to test this EPIRB to make sure it flashes and beeps at you, and that it's in a prominent position on the boat so you can see it from your helm position, or it's close to the helm position. It's always a good idea too to, when you receive the piece of paper after you register the EPIRB, is to laminate it and keep it in a waterproof container, such as where we had the owner's manual and beacon to beacon and so forth. So that if you do get asked to produce identification or proof that your EPIRB is up to date and your information is up to date, you've got it there on board the vessel. Once all this is done, then I suggest that you do a final walk around the boat, make sure that everything looks good and is right and is secured before you travel on the road. Prior to getting on the water, we need to do some preparation. We need to make sure that the coupling is attached to the car correctly. We need to make sure that the pin's in place. We need to make sure that the braking tab is released so that we've got individual braking with the trailer. Make sure our electrical is connected. Make sure our safety chain is connected. A very important thing here too is to make sure your jockey wheel is up and locked away in position, so it's not going to affect if you go over speed bumps and so forth. Now we have a winch that needs to have the boat nice and secure, and a safety chain here, just in case the winch strap breaks or something breaks on the trailer. the safety chain is going to support it. Here we have the registration numbers. They have to be a minimum of 150mm and a contrasting colour to the colour of the hull. On recreational vessels, we'd have a registration sticker that would be adjacent to the port side numbers. And tyres are pumped up, our bearings are greased and are working quite well. And then we work our way around to our trailer lights. They need to be working. You need to check them with your wife or another person so you know that they're in good working order. You'll notice here that the trailer is secured by a safety strap that holds the back of the boat down to the back of the trailer. And you'll notice here that with the motor tilted in this position, we need to have an orange safety flag because this section of the boat, or the motor itself, is way past the back of the trailer. The bung is one of the most important parts of your equipment. You need to make sure that it's secured prior to going anywhere near the water. I'd also check your prop, make sure your castellated nut is nice and tight with the split pin still in position. If you've got any marks on your prop, I would suggest that you file them off or clean them up so that you don't create vibration. I'm a great believer of using inox or WD-40 around the outside of the motor to protect it. And then when you start the motor, make sure you've got a telltale, and so that you know that you've got plenty of water going through the system. On small outboards, we have tiller steer arrangement as opposed to hydraulic steering as in the bigger boats or in cable steering that you see in a lot of older motorised cruisers. Here with this tiller arm, you normally have the throttle control on the end of the handle, and with this particular one you have a gear lever on the front, or you can have a gear lever over on the side. With this particular model outboard, it's got a safety lanyard that you put on in rough conditions or in times when you've got inexperienced people driving the boat. It's a very, very important function because if something happens to you and you let go that tiller arm, you're going to shut the motor down, and hopefully it could save your life. Also too, we have a fuel connection that's connected to the front of the boat. We have a fuel bulb that is quite susceptible to the UV rays and does perish over time. Hose clamps need to be tight. You need to check the hoses to make sure that the hoses aren't perished, because if they are, they let the air in, which means it's going to let the fuel out, and you're going to have fuel in the bottom of your boat, which is quite a dangerous situation. The first thing you do when you bring passengers or crew on board your vessel is to point out the location of the life jackets, and in this case, under this helm and this one here, if you've got them in side pockets or under floor hatches and so forth, you must have labels such as that there. The second most important thing is to make sure that your passengers and crew know how to put your life jackets on. In this case, you put it on sideways, put your arms through the straps, pull it down tight, and then secure it. In this case, we've got buckles, so we just clip it on such as this, and then make sure that when you jump in the water, that you grab hold of it at the top here, lock your elbows into your sides so you don't pop your shoulders, so that you don't injure yourself. To take them off, it's just the reverse, of course, and then make sure that when you're not using them, that you put them in similar things like a vacuum seal bag to protect them from getting wet and going mouldy, smelly, dirty and so forth. A very, very important thing to ensure to maintain the longevity of your life jackets. The colour, which is most important when you're out at sea, that's what people are going to see. We then have fire extinguishers in the corner here and a fire blanket over here under this seat here, and you can see by the stickers on the side here, we have our first aid kit. Under this seat we have our flare container and boiling bucket, and in a recreational boat a flare container would look similar to this. It contains your inshore flare kit, your V-sheet, your signal mirror, and possibly a whistle and so forth. If you're out in the bay or in open water, I would definitely have a VHF radio on board, and I normally leave it on channel 16 because that's your emergency call channel. You can call your coastal stations such as VMR or the Coast Guard or other vessels, and then you would go to a talk channel such as 732181, one of those.
I hope you found that informative. The walk around the vessel, all that information, very useful. And remember, there is information below in the table within the course. Take the time to read it, take the time to follow it, and meet your general safety obligation.